Hi everyone, we've got a nice photo today from the Scottish Hebrides, and this is courtesy of Trica Rawson from that site that I use on Facebook, Photos for Artists. I've drawn out the scene, nice simple line drawing, no masking fluid required today, and then I've got some colours that I've mixed up ready. So raw sienna, cobalt blue, a tiny bit of cerulean blue, and then a grey made with cobalt blue, burnt sienna and a tiny touch of rose. Okay, so I'm going to come on to the sky first of all. Plenty of water. And you can come over all of these distant mountains. We're going to get a nice impression of the sky. Doesn't have to be exact. So I'm coming over a second time just to make sure that I've got plenty of water on. Okay, and then with the raw sienna, I'm just going to bring in a little bit of a glow towards the top. So I'm using my round number 10. That bit of a rinse out. And then I'm going to pick up that little bit of cerulean blue. And there's a bit of a dash of cerulean blue just down here that I can see just in the sky. I'm just going to take a little bit there as well. Now I want you to be careful with this cobalt blue that you don't mix in with the raw sienna. So you're going to keep this towards the bottom area. You could use Naples yellow if you wanted to for that glow in the sky as well. Remember that you've wet over those mountains and it doesn't really matter because they're darker. You can come further across them. Just want some hints of blue in here first. And then I'm just going to give my grey a little bit of a mix up. And then circular motion. And there's lots of grey in the sky. That tiny bit of rose, just make sure that it's not going to go green over this raw sienna. Circular motion, pushing down, start to get some nice cloud effects. You want an odd glimpse of white in places. And really just let that settle in. Let the watercolour do its thing. So I still keep going with this circular motion. I want little glimpses of light, but not too much, hence why I'm taking quite a lot of cloud in here. It's typical Scotland weather. And then whilst that's just starting to settle a little bit, I'm going to bring some water over this stony beach area. Just so I can get a base onto that. And so I'm coming into my raw sienna. You can see the areas that are a little bit more sandy in colour. Just going to get that base in. And then into the grey. You don't want this to be too dark, so spread it quite thinly in the water. And then I'm going to touch into a little bit of the cobalt blue as well, just to get a bit of colour variation in there. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's now dried off. I'm going to come in with my round number 10 and a little bit of water, just to start to get these distant mountains in. So I'm doing this one on the left and then this one in the middle to start with. So round number 10 for your water, I'm placing it in those areas, and then with a round number 6 I'm going to come in with my grey paint. So I'm going to start with this one. The reason I'm starting with this one is because I want the other one to settle in a little bit before I come on with the paint, because I don't want it to flow too far. I want to get that misty effect. So this is just the same grey that we've used in the sky. Just leave a little bit of light showing. Then if you find it's flowing too much, then just dab a little bit off on your kitchen towel. It just means there's a little bit too much on the brush. And I don't want to end up with a hard line on this one. I want it to have that misty effect. Take a little bit more of the paint down the bottom so it has that darker feel. I'm going to dry those two off. Okay, so those two are dried off, so I'm going to come in and do this bigger one in the middle now. So a little bit of water again with my round number 10. And then in with the paint. Make sure you get a nice edge here. It's the same grey. Make sure you take plenty of paint on. Plenty of paint always gives you plenty of time. Get a nice edge here. Okay, and then where I've just brought that little bit over here, just with a damp brush, I'm just going to soften that in, just so that it finishes there. Okay, I'm just going to dry that one off. So that's dry. Now, straight onto the dry paper with a round number 6, I'm going to use this grey to pull out these really dark areas. So the fact that it hasn't got any water on the paper means that the paint will be darker. There is a very tiny little house in the distance. It is so super tiny that I'm going to just leave a dash of white. You can draw that out. I have drawn it out very lightly so that I know where it is. So this is straight on to dry. And you've got that little dash of a house there. That should have a really nice dark effect, a feeling of distance happening. I'll dry that one off. Okay, so I've squirted out a little bit of lemon yellow onto my palette as well, and I've wet this area just here, so this hillside here and a little bit of water along there. So with my round number 6, I'm going to dip into this lemon yellow and get that flash of the spring green starting to happen. Remember, it's your interpretation, so it doesn't have to be exact. There is another little bit of a building, could be a hotel or something up at the top here. You can leave that dry. I've got a little bit of the raw sienna just coming in at the bottom here. And dabbing into the cobalt blue. You don't want to eliminate all the yellow, you want to mix some of it together so that you're getting a nice green. If it's not quite green enough, dab in a little bit more of the lemon yellow. We're going to come back over this to create a little bit more depth after. This is just the base that's coming in at this point. And then I'm dipping into the grey. So I'm using my round number 6 for all of this. And again, I'm just looking at the shape of this building. I'm just trying to leave that shape in there at this point. I'm just dabbing in with the grey. start to get some shadow appearing there then. A little bit of shadow down here with the grey. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so I've dried that one off, and then I've just come on with a little bit of grey on the roofs of these houses that we can see. You just want a tiny indication, you don't want to go mad, just do your interpretation. Then I've mixed up some lemon yellow with cobalt blue, and I've added a touch of burnt sienna, so I've got quite a bluey green. But that's going to work quite nicely for this next part. So I'm going to come in with my round number 10. Just start to create. So this is straight on to dry. This foliage that we can see in the background is definitely trees. Brush is quite loaded up, so it's going to give me plenty of time. And I'm dabbing in an upwards motion. I'm just going to take a little bit of water onto that. So I get the indication that it is foliage, using the tip of the brush to create that effect. What I've also done is just squirted out a little bit of sepia. If you haven't got sepia, then you can use a mixture of ultramarine and burnt sienna. That will work quite nicely. So I'm just going to wet this area down here. I haven't actually rinsed my brush. I'm just trying to use the leftover green just to create that edge where this foliage meets the water. There's a little bit of light there. I haven't got all of these trees in, and I haven't got all of these little bits of houses and buildings in. I'm going for the less is more approach. So I've got that nice sharp top edge. Then I'm going to dab into my sepia. Again, I've not really rinsed my brush. And take this into this wet area. Again, dabbing it upwards, so the tip of the brush is at the top. That's going to start to create another level of darker foliage. Just have a quick look along here. A couple of little twiddly lines just to give a bit of definition there. Okay, I'm going to dry that off and then we'll come on to the water. Okay, so I've dried that off, and I've got a little bit of gum arabic here. If you haven't got the gum arabic, I think I gave most of you a pot for Christmas. I don't want you to worry. It's not essential. What this is going to do is actually reduce the flow of the paint. So it means that when we're putting these reflections in, they stay nice and still. If you haven't got the gum arabic, then what you need to do is just make sure that the wetness of the paper isn't too wet and your paint is quite thick when you go on. So you can do it either way. This just helps a little bit to reduce the flow of the paint, and it helps to lift out some nice white reflections as well. If you want to have a little practice on a separate piece of paper first, then you can do. If you don't like the gum arabic effect, and you can't reduce the flow by having the thicker paint, then the other way to do it is to do the water reflection, just the plain blue and grey, and then dry that off and come in with the reflections of the mountains onto dry. So you can do it that way if you're really struggling. So this is really nice and thick. I think most of you will have a pot of this. Okay, so then I'm going to come on with some cobalt blue. You can see that it's not really flowing. That's exactly what we want this time. Try to get some horizontal strokes in there. Horizontal always means that you get a nice water surface. The base is really the cobalt blue. So I have drawn out a fine pencil line where my reflections are going to go, just to help me. And then I'm just going to dab into the grey. Take a little bit of that in as well. Okay, so I've got that grey in. I'm going to come in with some of this dark green. You don't really need to worry about the white buildings at this stage. We can lift those out after. The beauty of the gum arabic means you can lift those out. So you're just following where you've got these dark areas. Okay, so I've carried on doing the reflections and the video card ran out at the wrong point again. So I've gone in here with the grey, with a horizontal stroke, a little bit of lemon yellow there, and then a little bit of sepia in this line here. Then I've dried that off. To get those white areas back, what you need to do is just wet whereabouts it is on the photograph. Now if you do a little bit of a horizontal stroke, and then it just lifts out really nice and easily. You don't want it to be as white as the actual building, so it works quite nicely. So I'm just dotting in again a little bit of water with my number 6, then just lift that off. So you just want an indication of that light area. If you want any other white highlights at this point, you can pop in a little bit of water So if you want to stroke through any of the areas, it will lift really easily. Give you that nice sort of white highlighted effect. Nice surface water feel. It's a strange picture in the way that it seems that the horizon line breaks and it slants slightly. I think it's just because of all of the islands behind that you can see. So where we've got this bit up here, I'm just going to pop a little bit of cobalt blue just in there, just so that's not white. And then I can just very carefully with a damp brush blend that in so that I haven't got such a sharp line. Okay, I'm going to dry that off. Okay, so I've wet this area of shrubbery right in the foreground just here, and I've taken it a little bit up onto the beach. I'm actually dabbing in to my lemon yellow, and I'm just going to pop the start of shrubbery in. So this just means that I'm making sure that this is nice and thick. The water that's coming a little bit higher is going to give a nice soft effect so that I don't end up with a hard edge for all of it. Sweep. This nice vibrant yellow at the front will make it come really forward as well. With the yellow still on my brush, I'm going to dab into some burnt sienna. So same, I want this nice and thick. Lemon yellow is opaque, so you'll see that it's got a different effect to when we use something like a gamboge yellow. I'm going to rinse my brush out, and I'm going to take some lemon yellow into my cobalt blue. So again, I want quite a fresh green. I'm still trying to use the same yellow so I don't mix them and I get that nice synergy. So if I just show you the sort of colour that I've got there. And then I'm just going to dab in with that as well. So we're getting a really nice base for this foliage. Okay, I'm just going to dry that one off. Okay, so I've wet the whole of the beach area now, and I'm going to start by coming in with a bit of sepia. Just to start to create a little bit of definition and a little bit of texture. So I'm using my round number 10. and come along this edge. It's one of those ones where you can do this in lots of different ways. I'm going to show you a couple of combinations. I'm going to get a nice dark edge here for the edge of the water. And I've got these little trails, so I'm just going to pop those in. I'm just varying the pressure of the brush really. Just dab into my grey. So it's still that same grey from before. Brush a little bit of a rinse. So just here I've missed a bit of water, so I'm just going to dab in with a little bit. So I've got my trusty toothbrush. So I'm coating that in some of the paint. I've wet it a little bit first. I'm just going to do that to protect my water and my sky, and then hold the toothbrush really close and pull with your thumb upwards. Okay, I need a bit thicker paint. Okay, so I've got a little bit thicker paint now. You can do this on to dry as well to give you a nice texture, and you can also do a bit of sponging if you want, which I'm going to show you on the foliage to finish off. So there's that little bit. Then if you get a loaded brush and you can do flecks like this to add a bit more texture. I'm going to come in and just create this sort of seaweedy bit here again. So this is now dried pretty much, which is absolutely fine. Just remove that off here. Come round this edge here, and I need to make this darker, so I'm coming in at the top and I'm going to create that edge just here with this grey. So this is all the same sky grey. I had to mix up a little bit more. And then just gently stroke that in so that you don't end up with it being too light. If I wet that area, it'll be too light at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to dry that off. So for the last little bit, I've got my sponge, I've wet it, I've wrung it out really well, and I've dabbed into lemon yellow and cobalt blue. Then I'm dabbing and twisting on this foliage area at the front. So this is going to give it a little bit more detail. Those colours from underneath will still shine through, and it'll just bring that section forward. If you don't want it to be too leafy, then bring in a little bit more with your brush just in places. Remember, with the sponge it's dab and twist. And then you can just, with your burnt sienna, whilst it's still damp, just take a few dabs in just to help that sit forward as well. Nice warm colour at the front will really bring that forward. Try and keep it nice and random. I'm using a little bit of the side of the brush so that it's not too dabby. Okay, if it looks a bit too bold, then just a little spritz, just blend it through. That's blending through nicely. Just a few more dabs with a sponge. And that's still got the green on. Okay, so that's all finished.